An evacuation order or government acquisition of land. Two legal options on the table that could save lives. Romardo Lyons has the conclusion of home or hazard, the return to Content Manchester.
It reeked.
There is a foul scent, the kind of scent where they associate with stagnant waters.
What reeks now? Worry. All because what's to come could be even more catastrophic.
Especially if the ground is already saturated and we see another major rainfall event like a hurricane, and with the Atlantic hurricane season starting on June 1st, that becomes a major concern. It's also important to remember that this is groundwater flooding. It has very little to do with water moving across land or blocked drains. Once the aquifer is heavily recharged, water can continue to move underground for days to weeks, as we've seen before.
The November 2025 flood saw water more than 300 feet above its normal level. It raises this question: why was a community built there? Several laws and planning frameworks regulate where and how communities are built. To name a few: the Town and Country Planning Act, which governs land use and development; the Natural Resources Conservation Authority Act. This deals with environmental protection and requires permits for certain types of development. The Water Resources Authority Act, which governs the management and protection of water resources. Meanwhile, Content sits atop an aquifer. I put the issue to the Jamaica Environment Trust, JET. CEO Dr. Teresa Rodriguez Moody says the island already has the framework, but lacks enforcement.
Flooding in places like Content shows why no-build zones are useful. They help to keep homes out of areas where the risk is simply too high, and Jamaica has already proposed this approach. Putting it into practice now is necessary if we want safer communities and more resilient development.
Back to NARA, Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says it will have special powers to fast-track development approvals and procurement. This will enable the execution of resilient infrastructure projects at a scale and speed unprecedented in Jamaica.
We are not restoring a pre-Melissa Jamaica. We are building a post-Melissa Jamaica that the generations before us dreamed of and the generations after us will inherit.
Until then, if the government believes there are safety concerns, it can acquire the land so that legal holders in Content can be paid to leave. Attorney at Law Alexander Shaw.
What the law says is that landholders have to be compensated based on the market value of the property, because the starting point is always that, as citizens, we are entitled to own property. We have a constitutional right to own property, and once the government elects to deprive you of that property, then the actions must be demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society. That's the test.
After such, the government is obligated to declare the public purpose of the land.
The situation in Content Manchester is a little different here, because what we're faced with is a public safety concern, and in those circumstances the government would usually issue an evacuation order.
This through the Disaster Risk Management Act.
There are criminal sanctions in the event that residents refuse to comply with those orders.
But for now, no such order, just hopes and prayers.
Once you make a start, then and if they're gonna do something otherwise, then it will be more necessary, yes. But if not, you can't just sit and wait.
I'm worried, and I know the hurricane season is just around the corner. Come on, how much time we have to beg to move from down here?
So residents sit anxiously, and the country at large looks to see how life in Content will unfold. Romardo, Lyons, TVJ News.